Believe it or not, I actually hated reading 5 months ago. It is March 1st when I'm filming this video, and so far this year I've already read 17 books. I feel like that in itself needs an applause. I just have never been like a super huge reader. I've always wanted reading to be one of my hobbies, so I forced myself into liking books, and here we are now. 17 books in 2 months, it cannot get much better than that. We're gonna go through and rate them, talk about the plots, talk about every single thing of the sorts, and obviously give you a star rating of how I rated each of those books. We're not gonna ramble anymore. Without further ado, let's get started. Make sure you're subscribed, because what would you be doing with your life if you haven't? I'll let you sit with that question. So I decided to be as organized as I possibly could with this video. This is the book I started off this year with, and this is the book I just finished. Book number 1 is The Last to Vanish by Megan Miranda. On Goodreads, I ended up rating this one a 4 stars, but I feel like when I first started reading, I was just rating to rate. I feel like I would change a couple of my star ratings. The past is the past, we can't change it. There's a girl named Abigail. She loves her job. She manages a place called the Passage Inn, which is a cozy resort in North Carolina. There were 6 visitors that visited this place. All of them disappeared without a trace. The last one that disappeared was a reporter who was reporting on those mysterious disappearances. After the reporter went missing, the case went cold, and then his brother mysteriously just shows up to the place. Abby's shocked, obviously. She feels for him because he just lost his brother, and he's mysterious disappearances, has no answer, so she's thinking he's coming here for closure. In this book, it's basically a goose chase to figure out all these little extra details. She figures out her coworkers and friends are not who they are, and you actually figure out more backstory about Abigail herself that you did not know at the beginning of the book. I ended up rating this book a 5 stars. The next book I read this year was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I also rated this one 4 stars. I feel like it was a pretty good book. I will note the fact that they do have like British terms, so you're gonna get like bloody, so that slowed me down, but there is like 6 different point of views. You're getting the bride, the +1, the best man, the wedding planner, and the bridesmaid. All of them have a secret. There's a big twist at the very end, and one of them is a murderer, so one of these people at this wedding ends up dying, and you have to figure out who, and you're not gonna figure it out until the end of the book. The last like few chapters, I feel like, are like the ones that are like you have to keep reading. You can't put the book down. Ended this one with 4 stars. The next book I have is The Housemaid. I don't have a physical copy with me because I loaned it to a friend, but when I tell you, this is my first Freida McFadden book after my friend Bryn, who y'all may know on here. My friend Bryn actually recommended it to me, and I was like, no, like the cover is just like not intriguing to me whatsoever, so I never picked the book up until I did, and she has got me fully hooked on the author Freida McFadden. This book is a 5-star rating for me. I love The Housemaid, the entire series. You like feel for like certain characters, and then by the end of the book, you're like, well, why was I feeling for them? Like, what was the absolute need? I love this book. If I could read it again, I definitely will. I feel like this is definitely one of her best books, just the way she wrote it, and then like plot twist you do not see coming. And there is 3 more books in the Housemaid series, which we'll talk about in just a second. I feel like didn't hold up as much as this one did, but this one definitely was a 5 stars, and it's being made into a movie at the end of this year, which I most definitely will be watching. Trust. Basically, there's a girl named Millie. She's homeless. She has a criminal record, and she is trying to be a housemaid. She finally gets hired by this really, really rich couple. The house she's sitting for, the wife, she's a slob. House is dirty. House is filthy. Like, Millie will clean the mess up, and the wife comes in, destroys it the next day. She lies about allergies for her daughter. It's whirlwind emotions, but they actually do end up giving Millie like her own room upstairs in the attic. It's a very, very small room, just a little cot. Funny thing is, the door only locks on the outside. Pretty much every single person in that book is crazy. There's also an Italian landscaper. There's just so many ties in this book, and someone dies. That's all I'll say. I went on a Freida McFadden kick after this, so don't even judge me. Next book I read was The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden. This is the second book in the Housemaid series. I feel like I didn't love this one as much as the first one. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. Basically, we're following the same characters again. We're following Millie, we're following Enzo. New set of characters besides those 2. She back to house sitting. I feel like after the trauma she faced from the first book, you think she'd consider getting another job? No, I do not know what she was thinking. So she's back to being a housemaid to a very wealthy couple. This woman's getting beat, so she thinks, and she's trying to help her way out. Someone dies, book plot twist. Every single one of Freida McFadden's books I feel like have like a big plot twist, especially the Housemaid series. You're feeling for a certain character and then twist. Every time you think you have Freida figured out, you literally don't. She will trick you in every way possible. There's just a way she writes. I feel like the way she writes it in a way that it's like, oh, this is too obvious, so it's gotta be this. And like, this is the answer that makes the most sense. But then way here in the corner is the actual answer. That is the actual plot of the book. And believe me, all the books I read from her, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the plot. Never is. I can never get Freida right. And I'm waiting on the day that I actually can. And the last big book in the Housemaid series, which is The Housemaid's Watching. I rated this a 4 stars originally, but I think I'd probably end up rating it like 3 stars now. I feel like it did fall flat. Millie and Enzo finally get their own house. She's finally stopped house sitting. She lives on a street where a kid went missing. Every single one of her neighbors is weird. There's not a single single normal one. All of them were crazy. She has two of them. One of them saying the other one's crazy, and the other one's saying she's crazy. Both of them are something in the end. And then Enzo was weird in this one. In my head, I'm thinking, Enzo, what are you doing? I ended up rating this book a 3. I put myself on a free to ban first a little bit. I had to like give myself a little break. We had to cleanse the palate. The next book I read was The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. I ended up rating this one a 3 stars, and that's solely because the characters, they were so childish. It was annoying me so much. One thing that I constantly will quote and constantly pick out to my fiance and tell him about, you're following this girl, her name is Lucy, and there's one quote that she said that stuck out to me that I will not be quiet about, is the fact that she was like, my legs are so hairy, don't look at me, I'm embarrassed. Like any real life situation, you just wouldn't say that. It's making that subject more obvious, meaning he's going to feel more inclined to look at your legs. That's just me. She said it and it stuck with me. So Lucy lived in Atlanta, then she moved back home with her older brother. She has a 4-year-old son that she wants to give the world to him, and both of them are now living with the brother. After Lucy is like dragging herself along, she's self-loathing, like she is just like, she's at an all-time low. He drags her out on the boat and is like, come on girl, like we are getting out of this house, we're gonna get you some things to do, like we gotta get out of this pit and me party. She gets out the pit and me party finally, and then she goes on the boat with her brother, and then the brother's friend shows up. His name is Cooper. Cooper is Drew's best friend. Lucy takes one look at this man and is like, I love him, I need him, like except for the fact that he is my brother's best friend. Drew told Cooper, he's like, my sister's off limits, don't bother her, leave her alone, like she's going through it, leave her alone. She's being childish for her age in this book, in my opinion, considering the fact that they're both in their late 20s, but that's besides the point. I didn't hate them, I didn't love them. This book was a 3-star rating for me, and that's all I'll say to it. Just when you think I'm done the Housemaid series, she actually had a short story that I had no idea about, but I did end up buying it. When they said short, it literally is a short story. My throat's dry, I gotta get something to drink. Back to what I was saying. The next book I read was The Housemaid's Wedding. This one was a 4-star rating for me just because I feel like it really was not needed. Rita could have left this off the series and the series would have done fine. Like it wouldn't have faced anybody. We're back to Millie and Enzo. They're finally getting married. She gets stood up for her wedding, not by Enzo, by someone else, but obviously I can't tell you. You gotta read the book. She finds someone's watching her. It gets dealt with in the end. It honestly was just not one of my favorite books. I feel like it was really rushed. I feel like it wasn't needed. I love you, girl. Like, let's talk about a book that put me in a reading slump. This would be Just One Taste by Lizzie Day. It was an enemies to lover type trope, and it just feel like it went on so much, and I don't know what it is with people writing books about people like in their late 20s being so childish. I've never seen people beat around their bush for their feelings so bad. Olive Stone has a celebrity dad. He passed away. He's dead. He's gone. Bye. She actually was in his will to take over everything. He owned this big restaurant. She's now taking over, except she does not want this business whatsoever. Like she could care less. The sous chef in the book, his name is Leo. In the dad's will, he wants his little cookbook finished off, but he wants Leo and his daughter to finish it off for him. They're traveling all around Italy to finish off this book. They're just beating around the bush the fact that they do not like each other, even though they clearly do. I love an enemies to lovers trope, but it's just the way these characters were written just irritated me so bad. When they get their feelings so quickly and then they just brush past them. No. Did not like that book. 3 stars. Are you ready for my Frida McFadden kick? Because it actually gets quite crazy. I started one book from her and I did not end. I rated this one a 5 stars. This is The Inmate, obviously by Miss Frida McFadden. As a new nurse practitioner at a maximum security prison, Brooke Sullivan is taught 3 critical rules. 1. Treat all prisoners with respect. Number 2. Never reveal any personal information. Number 3. Never ever become too friendly with the inmates. But nobody knows that Brooke has already broken the rules. Why? Because nobody knows her intimate connection with Shane Nelson, who's an inmate there. Basically, Shane is mic drop, and she just moved back into her hometown where she went to school at. Everybody knows her, she knows everybody. Like, this is a very, very small town. Across the street is her also childhood best friend. His name's Tim. There's another housemaid in this book, not Millie, but she's also crazy too. You gotta read the book. 5 stars, would recommend. After reading that one, I went on to One by One, also by Miss Frida Girl. I'm not even gonna say her name because I will get tired of saying it, but the next 3 books are from her as well. Claire needs this trip. It's a break from work, raising children, and a chance to repair her damaged marriage. Then on a lonely dirt road, Claire's minivan breaks down. With no cell reception, the group has no choice but to walk the rest of the way to their remote accommodation. The car breaks down, they're walking through the woods, and as you're reading throughout the book, one person is each time. Just random things are happening. You're hearing Claire's point of view, and then you're hearing some like random, unknown, anonymous person's point of view. So you kind of have to figure out who in the group's point of view is this. And when you think you know who it is, you're wrong. Think harder. I rated this book a 4 stars. It wasn't her best book, but it also was not horrible at all. It kept my attention. This is a really quick page turner. I read this book in 2 days. They're a quick and easy read, so they're really not hard to get through. This one was a 4-star read, and this is honestly one of her top books just because I never knew where this book was going. Newlyweds Trisha and Ethan are searching for the house of their dreams. They think they found it when they visit the remote manor that once belonged belonged to Dr. Adrian Hale, psychiatrist who vanished a trace years ago. But when a violent winter storm traps him at the estate, the house begins to lose its appeal. Stuck inside and growing restless, Trisha stumbles on a collection of audio transcripts from Dr. Hale's session with patients. As Trisha listens to the cassette tapes, she learns about the terrifying chain of events leading up to the doctor's mysterious disappearance. But by the time Trisha finally reaches the final cassette, the one that reveals the entire horrifying story, it will be too late. When I tell you this book had me on edge because I thought this book was going nowhere where it was actually gonna end up going, I would not lie to you. When you think you're feeling for someone and then they basically backstab you in the back because you don't have to feel sorry for them because they are literally psychotic and crazy. I cannot give you any details without ruining it because the twist is literally crazy and I'm just mad that I did not pick it up earlier. The next book I read was The Teacher by Miss Frida McFadden. This one was 4 stars. She's a thicker book from what I've read from Frida McFadden. Eve has a good life. She gets up every day, gets a kiss from her husband, and heads off to teach math at the local high school. All is as it should be, except last year, K-Sam High was rocked by a scandal involving a student-teacher affair with one student, Addie, at its center. But nobody knows the real Addie. Nobody knows the secrets that could destroy her if people at the school found out. And when Eve discovers the shocking truth, Addie will do anything to keep her quiet. You feel sorry for a certain person, and then you should have been feeling sorry for another person here. And the end of the book, when I tell you you have to read this book, I promise you, you will not regret your decision. The end of the book had me jaw dropped. I literally was like, you feel so bad for someone, and then Frida hits you with that ending, and then you're like, why did I even feel sorry for them in the first place? My stomach was repulsed. I felt sorry for you this entire time, and then you did this to me. 4 stars. Miss Frida girl, we have to talk. We had to sit down and talk about this recent release, The Crash. I ended up rating it a 3 stars just because everyone said there was a huge plot twist in it. I feel like it fell flat for me. I feel like it wasn't like a bam, like my jaw is on the floor. Another thing that annoyed me is the girl, her name is Tegan. She's 8 months pregnant. She gets into a crash on the road, and this couple takes her in. The entire time that she's pregnant, she craves tuna. So what does she call her baby the entire book? Little Tuna. Frida, please. The entire book, she calls her Little Tuna. Do not PMO. Do not PMO, Frida girl. I did not want to finish this book solely because of the fact that she was just like, oh, Little Tuna, it's gonna be okay. I feel like it almost was like a romance ending, if that makes sense, compared to her other books where it's like, what just happened? 2 stars, Miss Frida. 2 stars. After posting the fact that I read The Housemaid in my story, someone slid up and they said, you gotta read The Silent Patient if you like The Housemaid so much. And I was like, okay, let me see. Just sum this book up. Alicia's life is seemingly perfect. Until one night when her husband Gabriel returns late from work, Alicia shoots him 5 times in the face, and then she never speaks another word. She goes zip. And she, the silent patient, is hidden away at the Grove at a secure psychiatric unit in London. We have a therapist come in. His name is Theo. He's captivated by Alicia's story, and he literally jumps at the opportunity to work for her. He wants to be her therapist. He wants to figure out why she never talks. So you're basically following Theo, and then you're also looking back at Alicia's diary because she kept a diary the entire time. When I tell you my jaw was on the floor at the end of this book, what kind of plot twist was that? How did I get fooled? I ended up rating that book 5 stars. One thing about me is I'll get FOMO, so if I have a duology book that I gotta read both of the books, even if I hated the first one. So we threw it back and we got The Temporary Roomie, which is the second book in Sarah Adams' series, and it goes back to the Off Limits rule. So basically in this book, you're following Jesse, which is Lucy's best friend, and then Lucy's brother, Drew. Enemies to lovers trope type thing. They're both childish. They both beat around the bush with their feelings, and they made me mad the entire time. I was like, how long does it take for y'all just to admit you have feelings for each other? They're playing childish pranks on each other, and I'm like, y'all are too grown to be acting like this. I ended up rating it 3 stars. Something about like that trope and just that writing made me mad. My second to last book I read so far in this year is The Boyfriend, also by Miss Frida McFadden. Sydney Shaw, like every single woman in New York, has terrible luck with dating. She's seen it all. Men who lie on their dating profile, men who stick her with a dinner bill, and worst of all, men who cannot shut up about their mothers. Plot twist, that was all the same guy she's talking about. But finally, she hits the jackpot. Her new boyfriend is utterly perfect. He's charming, handsome, works at a doctor at a local hospital. Then, the brutal murder of a young woman, the latest in a string of deaths across the coast, co-funds the police. The primary suspect, a mystery man who dates his victims before he kills them. Following Sydney's point of view, and then you're following a guy named Tom, his point of view from previous years before. When I tell you, your jaw is gonna be on the floor because when you think you have the killer, like I literally genuinely thought I had the killer down to the T. I was like, oh my goodness, why do we have like 80 more pages left? This is the killer. Like, why can't we just announce it and move on with the book? I was wrong. Very, 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 very wrong. When I tell you, you can't underestimate Frida and how she's gonna end up with the plot twist, you genuinely can. The plot twist is crazy, and I ended up rating that one a 4 stars. And the last book that literally tore me to shreds, when I tell you I was full on like sobbing, like I literally am like I tell you, I could not breathe. My chest was like closing up because I was sobbing this hard, and books never hit me like this. Movies, occasionally. I ended up rating this book a 5 stars. This is The Things We Live Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. I also hate historical fiction, but I loved this book. I also didn't realize it was historical fiction when I picked it up, but that's besides the point. So you're following a 28-year-old Georgia Stanton. She has to start over after she gave up almost everything in a divorce, now back home at her late great-grandma's estate in Colorado. She finds herself face-to-face with Noah Harrison, the best-selling author of millions of books where the cover is always people nearly kissing. And Noah wants to finish her late great-grandma's book. Georgia's like, I'm having absolutely no piece of that. But as I read Scarlett's words in both the manuscript and her box of letters, I start to realize why Scarlett never finished the book. It's based on her real-life romance with a World War II pilot, and the ending isn't a happy one. So Noah wants to write like a really like we're walking into the sunset happy ending. Georgia thinks the exact opposite. We're switching between Georgia's point of view, Scarlett's point of view, and then also Noah's point of view, and you're switching between those 3 of them. When I tell you, when I first started reading this book, I almost DNF'd it because it's so slow. Like 80% of the book is very slow, but the last 20% of the book, it made it worth reading the 429 pages of this book. I sobbed and cried. My fiance came to my house and he literally was like, are you okay? Like, what happened? I'm like, this book, babe. Like, I'm like flipping and tears are flying. I was a mess, but this is my favorite book I think I've ever read. Every single thing about it, like the twist at the end, yeah, tears were shed. 5 stars. If I have to recommend any book after all the books I've rated this entire video, this is the one I'm telling you to grab. Even if you don't like historical fiction, you gotta read it. Put down your pride and read this book. That was it for me rating all of my books I've read so far this year. We're at a good 17. My goal for the entire year is 50. Since we only finished 2 months, I feel like we definitely have a bunch of time, especially with all the other trips I have planned for the rest of the year. This is my first ever book review video slash like full-on book video. If you want to see more of these, definitely let me know by liking this video or subscribing, or also just let me know in the comments. I love you guys so much, and I will see you next Friday. Bye. Also, let me know if the microphone was annoying. Hopefully I didn't annoy y'all.